Welcome to Edmonds Election Watch 2015. I'm your host, Teresa Wippel. In the studio with us, we have Lora Petso, who is running for Edmonds City Council Position 7. Laura, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So tell us about yourself and your background, how long you've been in Edmonds, and also why you're running for re-election to your position.
Okay, thanks. I moved to the Edmonds area about 26 or 8 years ago. I'm a longtime resident. My husband and I run a small pension consulting firm here in Edmonds as well, and we raised our family here. So I've been here a long time. I've served 9 years on the Edmonds City Council and served on a variety of committees. Served 2 years as council president pro tem and a year as the council president. So I've been very involved with the city. We also run a chess club at Sherwood Elementary, and this year will be our 25th anniversary of running that chess club.
Oh, I didn't know it had been that long. That's incredible.
It is incredible.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun, though.
That's great. Okay. Let's start out with a question that I think is fairly basic. What do you think are the top 3 challenges facing Edmonds in the next few years?
I don't know if I've identified the top 3, but certainly 3 of the major challenges coming up over the next few years are long-range financial planning. That needs to be done. Making a plan for an emergency access to the waterfront. That needs to be done. And sorting out our contract relationship with Fire District 1. They have asked for renegotiation, and there's some service delivery options. There's some issues to talk about. So those are going to take a lot of time over the next few years, and they're issues that I feel like my experience will be very valuable in handling.
And the fiscal issue is one that I think does definitely come up from time to time. And of course, the projections are that, we're going to be running out of money eventually. Who knows exactly when. And have you, given your broad experience on the council, have you had a chance to think about, maybe what some of the options might be for addressing that problem?
Yeah, we actually have done a really good job lately with a variety of ways of addressing that. Basically, the financial position always looks like that because your revenues are always projected at the 1% property tax growth, and your salaries are typically going up faster than that, and that paints the same picture each time. And so you do things to try to help that position. For example, when I interviewed for the council appointment in 2010, I suggested we refinance the bonds that are higher interest rate at a lower interest rate. And when we did that, we saved about $2 million for the city, which is great. But, it's a one-time deal, and we can't go back and refinance them again for even less because we got a really great interest rate. And so you just have to keep looking around for ways to save some money while keeping your service levels high.
And the Fire District 1 issue is also one. In fact, I've interviewed council members from other cities, nearby cities, who are also, and Linwood in particular is now in a position of looking at whether they want to go from their own fire department to Fire District 1. And then, of course, the Regional Fire Authority, which has been discussed over the years. And I know you were on that group.
I was on that committee, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Initially, I was on that with DJ Wilson and former Mayor Mike Cooper. And then more recently, I was on that with Mayor Erling and former council member Strom Peterson. So I am definitely our senior council representative to that group, should it reform. And there are other options. As you mentioned, Linwood might be looking at contracts. Maybe there's ways to partner on some of the services. The key will be to just make sure that Edmonds residents still get the quality of service, particularly on EMS, that they want and that we need.
Okay, very good. Few hot button issues that have come up in recent months on the council. One is the Sunset Avenue walkway. You've been an outspoken opponent of some of the changes that have happened.
Some of the changes, yeah.
We're now in a position of, I guess, evaluating the pilot project and trying to decide where to go from here. And of course, there have been people who have come to council and are not happy at all. There are some people who've come and said they like it. At this point, what is your vision for what should happen next with Sunset?
Well, I actually liked the suggestion of a town hall, and I kind of hope we get there because the 3-minute comment at a public hearing is nice, but it's not the same as an exchange of ideas. And people have approached me with a lot of great ideas. One individual says, well, why don't we taper the sidewalk a little bit? Does it really have to be 8 feet? Another man suggested, because he knew I had a concern about mixing the bikes and the walkers on this narrow pathway. And he said, well, why don't you just force the bike riders to dismount if there are pedestrians present? And so there's a lot of ideas out there, but to get them all collected and in front of everybody at the same time for serious consideration is the trick. And so I'd like to see us find some way of doing that, of bringing those ideas forward. I think we can do it. I think we will have a walkway. I just don't know if it's going to be exactly in the form that it currently is, and I kind of am, as you say, hoping that it's not. I'm hoping we have 1 or 2 more changes in our bag of tricks before we go ahead.
Okay. And then another one, of course, is the crumb rubber infill playfields at the old Woodway
I have
High
learned
School.
so much about crumb
Me
rubber.
too. I never could have predicted in March that I was going to become so knowledgeable about the topic. So, a couple of issues related to that. I think the one that I hear a lot, and I'm sure you've heard too, is, the bigger picture issue of just citizens knowing about some of these issues before they actually get to the point where decisions have already been made. And it's a bigger conversation, which I would like to ask you about, and we'll get back to the actual issue of crumb rubber, but bigger picture is, what can we do to engage citizens better, and families in particular better, who are busy, who don't necessarily pay attention to what's going on in their government until it affects them in their backyard? How do we fix that?
It's a difficult question that we've grappled with almost every year. Almost inevitably, the planning board says, gosh, we wish those people who came to your council meeting had come to our planning board public hearing.
Yeah.
And, that happens all the time. Or, gosh, we wish we had heard about this before you moved the parking that way or changed that rule or whatever. And I think it's just something that we have to keep in the front of our minds, that maybe we just get busy and we're trying to solve this issue and we think we've solved the issue, and then we present it to the public. And maybe at that point, it's already too late. Maybe we need to find a way to incorporate the public in that phase where we're still kicking around ideas. And, maybe that doesn't get done because it's a little embarrassing. Not all ideas are good. You might come up with an idea and then you might scrap it. But it would be an approach to getting the public comment in earlier, so that the decision, because it is frustrating for folks if it appears the decision is already made by the time the comment comes in. And it's frustrating for the folks who worked on something, whether it's a board or commission or staff, if the opposite happens. If they think they've done a good job and they present something to council and it's shot down, it's frustrating that way too. And so it would be nice. I don't know how you solve it because families are busy. Everybody's busy. But families are really busy.
Yeah.
So it's going to be hard to get them in and where. I think your website helps. I think that the internet, blogs and Facebook and all that social media that I do not use very heavily, I think it helps. I think it keeps people more aware than they would have been.
Okay. Well, getting back to the issue of the crumb rubber itself, looking at it now, what do you think should happen next? The fact that we've got and I'm not sure what will have been decided by the time this actually
Right.
airs in early October, but, the interlocal agreement is still pending with the school district on whether we will operate it jointly with them on these turf fields, up at Woodway. But bigger picture, what are your concerns about, what has happened in terms of both the process, what would you have done differently? What do you think we should do moving forward, with this process?
I'd probably just focus on what we could or should do moving forward, and I think I have 2 priorities there. I got a question on that this morning. I probably didn't answer particularly well, but I've been thinking about it all day. crumb rubber gets under your skin. Oh, sorry. But it's something that has been front and center. And I think it's very important that we try to have a voice in the selection of material for any subsequent phases of the fields. And I think it's very important that we try to protect the city from potential liability if, in fact, it turns out that this product does cause harm to a particular group of people, whether it's young children or soccer goalies or the environment or, whoever these chemicals have the potential to harm. We shouldn't be undertaking liability for that because right now we have no exposure on that. We haven't gone and put crumb rubber on public property yet as a city.
Right.
And so, and it may prove that that's a good position to be in.
Okay. Another question that I have heard over time, people talk about, and as a council person, you are probably in a better position to address this than a lot of folks. The number of executive sessions that people at least perceive happen after council meetings or before council meetings, and whether we have more than we used to have. What do you guys discuss during those sessions anyway? Why don't you tell us what's going on? Just paraphrasing some of the things I've heard. What would you say to people about that?
Well, I understand the frustration, and we don't want to be meeting behind closed doors when we don't have to be. And we try to be careful not to be meeting behind closed doors when we're not supposed to be. But, it's pretty much up to events and the council president and the city attorney as to whether we're meeting behind closed doors and what the reason for it is. And if the city attorney says it's fine with him and we should be meeting behind closed doors to talk about this item, then it's pretty tough. I mean, I guess there's been a couple times where you think, well, I'm not real sure about this, maybe I should just get up and leave. But it's really tough when you get the legal advice that, yes, we should be talking about this in here right now, to not go along with what you're told. And you say, okay, let's talk about it in here. And I'm sure that it causes some discomfort with the citizens because, among other things, we don't say what we're talking about. So you could show up and we're having a discussion on real estate. And that's all you know. You don't know which piece of real estate. You don't know what we're talking about in connection with it. Or we might be having a discussion on litigation where the possibilities are even broader. And you don't know, if you're sitting there in the audience and you have a concern on a piece of property or you have some litigation that you're following, you don't know even if that's what we're talking about or not sometimes. And so it's got to be frustrating. And, I've been on that side too, where, I know an executive session regarding property is going on and I wonder if it's the property that I've come down to council to speak about or not. And I know it's frustrating, but that kind of falls on council. It's not like we can sit there and tell the city attorney, no, we don't want to talk about that litigation. It's not, we don't have that choice. If it needs a council decision, then we need to talk about it.
Okay. My last question for you is just listening to some of the as we're in campaign season and a lot of the campaign rhetoric. And one of the things that I've heard people say in, the opposition about you is that you tend to vote against things rather than for things, or that you're, often in the minority position on a lot of things, and maybe you're not as collaborative as some people wish you would be. And I would like to give you an opportunity to respond to that.
Okay, well, as you know, 4 years ago, that same issue came up, and I had at that time actually run the numbers. And it turns out that all of the council members are pretty much somewhere in 70% of agreeing on substantive issues. I'm not talking about motion to approve the agenda or anything.
Right.
But usually, and the only difference is really is you get 72% for one council member and 78% for a different one. But really, everybody's in a fairly tight range on that. And at that time, I was pretty much in the middle. It does vary depending on what the issues are. And it does vary depending on what you personally are willing to try for. For example, on a big complicated issue like Westgate, I may have 6 changes I'm supporting, and I may bring all 6 motions, knowing darn well that I'm not going to get 6 motions passed, and I really don't care. I'm not keeping score in that way. I'm thinking that if we, have the open space or the amenity space available to the public, that's a good thing, so I'll make that motion. Or I'm thinking that if we require the retail business space to be high-quality retail space or with a higher first-floor ceiling or whatever it takes to make retail succeed, I'm willing to make that motion. And if it passes, then good, we probably have a better policy because the majority voted for it. And if it doesn't pass, then for those people keeping score, chalk one up that I missed. But I'm not going to not try, I think we should put it out there, and if there's at least a second, then you get a vote, and you're okay. I don't do a lot of frivolous stuff where I know I won't even get a second. I don't do stuff to undermine the motion, I don't. But it's just, I am willing to try to improve a piece of legislation, whether I'm ultimately going to vote for it or against it. I'll still try to improve it. It's worth it.
Okay, great. Well, now is your opportunity to talk to the voters directly and share with them why they should vote for you. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to do that.
Okay. Well, I guess the one reason you should vote for me, I would say, would be because I do support our building height limits, and our building height limits make a significant contribution to the quality of life and the small-town atmosphere of our town, and I like that. Another reason you should vote for me is I'm good value for money. I think that the $2 million we saved in refinancing the bonds is probably a lot more than I will ever be paid by the city of Edmonds for my services. So I think I'm good value for money. And the third reason, it's interesting, I didn't actually have this as part of my campaign basis before, but it did come up at the kickoff events, that I am fairly detail-oriented. And so if we have a policy that is designed to produce X result, I'll actually check and make sure that the code presented to council might actually produce that result. It's not, I won't let it go just without glancing, but I'll actually try to make sure that the code we adopt will produce the result that the folks requested. And I think those are all excellent reasons to vote for me.
Okay, well, Lora, thank you so much for coming in today, and I wish you the best of luck on your campaign.
Thank you, Teresa.